Have you ever felt completely alone in a world full of people? Sometimes the most unexpected angels come with 4 paws and whiskers. This is the incredible true story that unfolded one cold autumn evening in Central Park, New York, where a small act of kindness from an unlikely friend would change someone's life forever. The gentle glow of street lamps had just begun to illuminate the winding paths, setting the stage for a moment that would touch hearts across generations. Sarah Mitchell sat alone on a weathered wooden bench, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs that seemed to blend with the rustling leaves around her. A 34-year-old elementary school teacher had just received the kind of news that shatters worlds. Her mother's cancer had returned, more aggressive than ever. The doctors gave her just months to live, and Sarah felt the weight of powerlessness crushing her chest. Time seemed to stand still in this moment of raw vulnerability. The park was nearly empty as dusk settled in, with only a few joggers passing by, their footsteps growing fainter as they disappeared into the gathering darkness. Sarah hadn't even noticed when she'd first arrived at the park, walking aimlessly after leaving the hospital. Her phone had been buzzing incessantly with messages from concerned friends, but she couldn't bring herself to read them. The words from the doctor's meeting kept replaying in her mind, each repetition feeling like a fresh wound. In the distance, a small grey figure moved silently between the shadows of trees, its eyes reflecting the dim light of the park lamps. This unassuming presence would soon become the catalyst for an extraordinary connection. The creature moved with the cautious grace that only street-hardened animals possess, its own story of survival written in subtle scars and a slightly crooked tail. Neither Sarah nor the cat knew it yet, but their paths were about to intersect in the most meaningful way. Around them, the city continued its endless symphony, distant sirens, the rumble of subway trains underground, the occasional horn of yellow cabs threading through nearby streets. These familiar sounds of New York life seemed muffled and far away to Sarah, as if she were underwater. Her world had narrowed to this single bench, this single moment, this overwhelming wave of grief that threatened to pull her under completely. The autumn breeze carried the scent of approaching rain, matching the tears that continued to fall silently down her cheeks. Sarah's hands clutched a crumpled tissue, her knuckles white with tension as she tried to regain her composure. She had always been the strong one, the reliable daughter who never broke down, the teacher who maintained a smile even on the hardest days. But tonight, in this quiet corner of Central Park, all those carefully constructed walls were crumbling. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, always telling her it was okay to not be okay sometimes. The irony of that advice now felt like a knife twisting in her heart. The grey cat had been watching from behind a nearby bush, its keen eyes taking in every detail of Sarah's distress. Unlike the humans who hurried past, averting their eyes from the crying woman, the cat seemed drawn to her pain. Years of street life had given this feline a unique sensitivity to suffering, perhaps because it had known so much of it itself. With slow, deliberate movements, it began to edge closer to the bench, guided by an instinct older than human civilization. The evening air grew colder, and Sarah pulled her light jacket tighter around her shoulders, not really feeling the chill, but responding to it automatically. Her thoughts drifted to all the autumn evenings she had spent with her mother in this very park. Feeding ducks as a child, studying for college exams while her mom brought hot chocolate, celebrating her first teaching job with a picnic under these same trees. Each memory now felt like a precious jewel that she might soon lose forever. The weight of impending loss pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. A soft rustling sound barely registered in Sarah's consciousness as the cat moved closer still. The feline's own story was one of resilience, abandoned as a kitten, surviving harsh winters, finding kindness in unexpected places, and somehow maintaining a gentle spirit despite life's hardships. Something in Sarah's obvious pain called to this survivor's heart, creating an invisible bridge between two souls in need of connection. The cat's whiskers twitched as it assessed the situation with ancient feline wisdom. The park lights had fully come on now, creating pools of warm light that held back the growing darkness. In one of these circles of illumination, Sarah's solitary figure created a portrait of human suffering that would soon be transformed. The grey cat, now just a few feet away, paused in its approach, as if gathering courage for what would become a pivotal moment in both their lives. Neither could have guessed how this chance encounter would ripple outward, touching not only their own lives, but inspiring countless others who would later hear their story. Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising an approaching storm that matched Sarah's emotional turmoil. She barely registered the sound, lost in memories of her mother's smile, her infectious laugh, the way she could light up any room just by entering it. The thought that such light could be extinguished seemed impossible, wrong, like a fundamental error in the universe itself. Sarah's tears fell faster now, dropping onto her clasped hands like the first raindrops of the coming storm. The gentle padding of soft paws on wooden planks went unnoticed as the cat finally reached the bench. Its caution gave way to determination as it sensed the depth of Sarah's distress. This small creature, who had known its own share of life's cruelties, was about to offer comfort in the purest, most unconditional way possible. The connection about to form would demonstrate how the smallest beings can sometimes have the biggest impact on a broken heart. A cool breeze swept through the park, carrying the scent of rain and stirring fallen leaves into brief dances around Sarah's feet. She remained oblivious to these small movements, trapped in the prison of her own pain and fear. The world had become a blur of tears and memories, each happy recollection now tainted with the shadow of impending loss. But in this moment of absolute desolation, hope was quietly padding closer on 4 careful paws. Time seemed to slow as the grey cat made its final approach, its movements deliberate and graceful. Years of street life had taught it to read humans well, to know when to stay away and rarely, when to draw near. Something about Sarah's pain spoke to the deepest instincts of this small survivor. The cat's own experiences with hardship had somehow translated into an extraordinary capacity for empathy, though none who saw it on the street would have guessed at such depth in a seemingly ordinary stray. The city's usual cacophony seemed to fade into the background, creating a pocket of silence around this moment. Few remaining park-goers hurried past, eager to reach their destinations before the threatening storm broke. None of them noticed the small drama unfolding on the simple park bench, the convergence of 2 souls, each carrying their own burdens, about to create something remarkable. The air grew heavy with the weight of approaching rain and unspoken possibilities. Sarah's world had narrowed to the rhythm of her own heartbeat and the endless loop of worried thoughts spinning through her mind. How would she handle the coming months? How could she be strong enough for her mother while processing her own grief? The questions felt impossible to answer, each one adding to the overwhelming sense of helplessness that threatened to consume her. She was so lost in these thoughts that she remained unaware of her approaching companion. The grey cat had survived on the streets through a combination of luck, instinct, and the occasional kindness of strangers. It had learned to recognize safe spaces and gentle souls, developing an almost supernatural ability to sense when its presence might be welcomed rather than shooed away. Tonight, that instinct was drawing it forward with unusual certainty, as if some greater purpose was guiding its paws toward this particular bench and this particular person. In the gathering darkness, the cat's grey fur almost seemed to glow in the lamplight, creating a ghostly aura around its small form. Its eyes, reflecting the artificial light, held wisdom gained through hardship and survival. This unlikely angel, bearing its own scars and stories, was about to prove that sometimes the most powerful healing comes from the most unexpected sources. The stage was set for a moment of pure magic in the heart of New York City. The sounds of the approaching storm grew louder, but still Sarah remained lost in her private world of pain. Her thoughts swirled like autumn leaves in a wind, each one carrying a memory, a fear, or a prayer. She had always believed in being strong, in facing life's challenges head-on, but this situation felt beyond her capacity to handle. She needed something, though she couldn't have said what, to help her find her way back to hope. As the cat prepared to make its presence known, the park seemed to hold its breath. The wind died down momentarily, the distant traffic seemed to fade, and even the threatening thunder seemed to pause. This small creature, overlooked by countless passers-by, was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most profound comfort comes in the smallest packages. Its next action would begin a chain of events that would touch not only Sarah's life, but the lives of many others who would later hear their story. The emotional weight of the moment hung in the air like the approaching storm clouds overhead. Sarah's grief, raw and overwhelming, created an almost tangible field of pain around her. Yet in this darkest moment, when hope seemed furthest away, the universe was about to remind her that love and comfort can appear in the most unexpected forms. The grey cat, with all its street-worn wisdom, was about to become the unlikely angel she never knew she needed. The first touch was so gentle that Sarah almost didn't feel it, just the softest brush of fur against her ankle. Through her tears, she looked down to find a pair of golden eyes gazing up at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The small grey cat sat perfectly still, its slightly ragged ear and battle-scarred nose telling stories of a hard life on the streets. Yet there was something in its steady gaze that spoke of wisdom beyond human understanding. Sarah's initial surprise gave way to a fresh wave of emotion as the cat maintained its unwavering stare. Here was another soul who seemed to truly see her pain when everyone else had hurried past. The cat's presence stirred memories of her mother's beloved Persian, who had passed away just last year, another loss in what felt like an endless series. Her mother had been devastated, and now this new blow threatened to break both their hearts beyond repair. The storm clouds overhead finally released their burden, sending light raindrops pattering against the leaves above. Most people would have rushed for shelter, but Sarah remained frozen on her bench, lost in the connection with this unexpected visitor. The cat, too, showed no inclination to seek cover, despite its presumed street-smart instincts. Instead, it moved closer, its thin body revealing the harsh realities of life as a stray. Something about its determined presence, despite obvious hardship, struck a chord deep within Sarah's heart. As the rain began to fall more steadily, Sarah's thoughts turned to her mother's upcoming treatments. The doctors had outlined an aggressive plan: chemotherapy, radiation, experimental protocols, each option sounding more daunting than the last. The financial burden alone was overwhelming, but it was the thought of watching her vibrant, loving mother endure such suffering that truly broke her heart. The cat, seemingly sensing a fresh wave of distress, pressed its small body against her leg. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to touch the cat, but she hesitated, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd allowed herself any form of comfort. The past week had been a blur of hospital corridors, medical consultations, and brave faces put on for her mother's benefit. She had become so focused on being strong that she'd forgotten how to accept tenderness, even from this unexpected source. The cat, however, made the decision for her, pushing its head firmly against her suspended hand. The simple contact of warm fur against her fingers unleashed something in Sarah that she had been holding back for days. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these felt different. Not the lonely tears of despair, but the relieving tears of shared burden. The cat began to purr, the sound barely audible above the falling rain, yet somehow filling the space between them with a tangible comfort. This small creature, who had likely known its own share of suffering, was offering what no human had managed to provide: unconditional presence in the face of pain. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by a low rumble of thunder that seemed to shake the very ground. The cat flinched slightly but didn't retreat, instead pressing closer to Sarah's leg. Its fur was becoming damp with rain, yet it remained steadfast in its chosen post. Sarah found herself wondering about this animal's story. What hardships had it endured to develop such empathy? How had it learned to offer comfort with such perfect timing? The mysteries of its past only added to the surreal nature of this encounter. As the rain continued to fall, Sarah noticed something about her unexpected companion that she hadn't seen before. The cat's left back leg showed signs of an old injury, causing it to sit slightly askew. Yet despite this obvious imperfection, the animal moved with a grace and purpose that spoke of resilience. In that moment, Sarah saw a reflection of her own situation. Life had dealt hard blows, but perhaps there was still room for dignity and purpose in the face of adversity. The park had emptied completely now, leaving Sarah and her feline friend in a world of their own. The rain created a curtain around them, muffling the city sounds and creating an intimate space of shared understanding. Sarah's phone buzzed again in her pocket, probably her sister checking in. But for now, this moment felt too precious to interrupt. The cat's purring had grown stronger, creating a soothing vibration against her leg that seemed to reach directly into her troubled heart. Time seemed to lose meaning as Sarah sat there, one hand gently stroking the damp fur of her newfound friend. Each pass of her fingers revealed new battle scars hidden beneath the grey coat. testament to a life lived on the edges of human society. Yet, despite everything this animal had clearly endured, it had retained the capacity for kindness, for connection, for offering comfort to a stranger in pain. The parallel to her mother's unwavering spirit in the face of illness was not lost on Sarah. The reality of her mother's situation hung heavy in Sarah's thoughts, but somehow the weight felt more bearable, shared with this small, sturdy presence. The doctor's words echoed in her mind: aggressive, advanced, limited options, each term carrying its own burden of fear and uncertainty. Yet here in the rain-soaked darkness of Central Park, a stray cat was teaching her something about facing adversity with grace. Its very presence seemed to whisper that no soul needs to bear pain alone. Through the curtain of rain, Sarah caught glimpses of the cat's eyes, still fixed on her with that uncanny understanding. In those golden depths, she saw something that reminded her of her mother's gaze, a mixture of wisdom, compassion, and indomitable spirit. The similarity brought fresh tears to her eyes, but these were accompanied by the first faint stirrings of hope. If this small creature could survive and still offer kindness, perhaps they too could find their way through the darkness ahead. Another boom of thunder rolled across the sky, closer now, but neither Sarah nor the cat showed any inclination to move. The rain had soaked through Sarah's light jacket, and the cat's fur was plastered to its thin frame, yet the moment felt too significant to break. In this shared discomfort, there was a kind of solidarity, a wordless acknowledgement that some things were more important than staying dry. The cat's purring continued, a steady counterpoint to the storm's growing intensity. Sarah's thoughts drifted to the months ahead, the hospital visits, the treatments, the uncertain outcomes, but now these images were accompanied by a new feeling. The cat's steady presence had awakened something in her, a reminder that strength doesn't always mean facing things alone. Its own visible wounds and imperfections spoke to the possibility of surviving, even thriving, despite life's harshest blows. In its scarred but dignified form, Sarah began to see a kind of blueprint for resilience. The rain was falling harder now, creating small rivers between the park's cobblestones. Sarah's clothes were completely soaked, and she knew she should seek shelter, but something kept her rooted to the bench. The cat, too, remained steadfast, its wet fur darkened to charcoal, but its spirit undimmed. There was something almost ceremonial about their shared endurance of the elements, as if the rain was washing away old fears and making space for new possibilities. Looking down at her small companion, Sarah noticed how the raindrops caught the light as they fell from its whiskers, creating tiny prisms that scattered the lamplight. Despite its bedraggled appearance, there was an undeniable nobility in the way the cat held itself. Head high, gaze steady, fully present in this moment of connection. Its calm acceptance of discomfort for the sake of offering comfort struck Sarah as profound, a lesson in priorities she hadn't known she needed. The city lights seemed to blur and soften through the rain, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere around their shared sanctuary. Sarah's hand, still resting on the cat's wet fur, had stopped shaking, and her breathing had slowly synchronized with the rhythm of its purring. In this strange, rain-soaked moment, something was shifting inside her. Not a denial of the pain ahead, but perhaps a new way of carrying it. The cat's scarred but resilient presence offered a living testament to the possibility of grace in hardship. Each flash of lightning illuminated the scene in stark relief. A woman and a cat, sharing a bench in a storm, both bearing visible and invisible wounds, both finding unexpected solace in this chance encounter. The cat's old injury and Sarah's fresh grief created an unspoken bond, a recognition of life's capacity to both hurt and heal. In this moment of raw vulnerability, barriers between species seemed to dissolve, leaving only the pure essence of compassion. As another peal of thunder shook the air around them, Sarah found her thoughts turning from despair to determination. The cat's journey, from abandoned stray to this moment of profound connection, spoke to the possibility of finding purpose in pain. Its willingness to sit with her in the storm, despite its own discomfort, demonstrated a kind of courage that transcended simple survival. In its steady presence, Sarah began to glimpse a path forward through her own gathering storm. The rain continued its relentless fall, but neither Sarah nor her feline companion showed any sign of retreating. This shared endurance seemed to strengthen their unlikely bond, creating a space where pain could exist alongside hope. The cat's purring remained constant, a gentle reminder that comfort can come from the most unexpected sources. In its scarred but unbroken spirit, Sarah found a mirror for the strength she would need in the months ahead. A particularly bright flash of lightning illuminated the entire park, casting dramatic shadows through the rain-soaked trees. In that brief, brilliant moment, Sarah caught a clearer glimpse of something she hadn't noticed before. A small pink collar hidden beneath the cat's wet fur, so worn and faded it was almost invisible. This unexpected detail sparked a realization that sent a jolt through her entire body. This wasn't just any stray cat. This was a survivor who had known both love and loss. The discovery of the collar triggered something profound in Sarah's mind, a shift in perspective that felt almost physical in its intensity. Like this cat, her mother's situation wasn't simply about survival or defeat. It was about carrying on with dignity and grace, regardless of what had been lost or what challenges lay ahead. The cat's golden eyes seemed to hold her gaze with renewed intensity, as if acknowledging that Sarah had finally understood something essential. Through the steady drumming of rain, Sarah found herself speaking aloud for the first time since arriving at the park, her voice rough with emotion, but growing stronger with each word. She told the cat about her mother, about the diagnosis, about her fears and hopes, and the overwhelming feeling of helplessness that had brought her to this bench. The cat listened with unwavering attention, its presence offering a strange but powerful sense of validation to her outpouring of emotion. A memory suddenly surfaced in Sarah's mind, her mother's voice from just that morning, weak but determined in her hospital bed. Sometimes the biggest battles are won by the smallest warriors. At the time, Sarah had thought her mother was talking about the cancer cells, but now, looking at this small, brave creature beside her, the words took on a new meaning. Size and strength weren't always measured in the same ways. Sometimes the most powerful forces came in unexpected packages. The rain had begun to ease, though neither Sarah nor the cat moved from their shared sanctuary. The cat's fur was completely soaked now, making it look even smaller, yet its dignity remained undiminished. Sarah realized that true strength wasn't about appearing unaffected by life's storms. It was about maintaining one's essential nature, despite them. Her mother had always embodied this truth, and now this remarkable cat was reinforcing the lesson in its own unique way. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, and Sarah noticed something else about her companion. Despite its obvious fear of the thunder, the cat remained steadfastly by her side. This small act of courage, choosing connection over comfort, struck Sarah as profoundly meaningful. It reminded her of her mother's determination to attend her classroom's holiday performance last winter, despite feeling awful from her first round of treatments. Some things, some connections were worth enduring discomfort for. In that moment, Sarah's perspective began to shift fundamentally. The grief and fear didn't disappear, but they began to transform into something else, a determination to face whatever came with the same quiet dignity she saw in both her mother and this remarkable cat. The old collar around the cat's neck spoke of a past life, perhaps happier times, yet here it was, still capable of offering comfort and connection to a stranger in need. The cat's purring grew stronger, as if sensing and encouraging this internal transformation. Its scarred body and steady presence told a story of resilience that went beyond mere survival. It spoke of the capacity to remain gentle despite hardship, to offer kindness despite having known cruelty. Sarah found herself wondering if perhaps this wasn't just a chance encounter, but something more intentional in the grand scheme of things. A warm feeling began to spread through Sarah's chest, displacing some of the cold fear that had taken residence there since the doctor's announcement. She realized that while she couldn't control her mother's illness or its outcome, she could choose how to face it. Like this remarkable cat, she could choose to remain present, to offer comfort even in discomfort, to maintain her capacity for connection even when life turned harsh. The storm's intensity began to wane, though occasional rumbles of thunder still rolled across the sky. Sarah noticed that her hands had stopped shaking, and her breathing had found a steadier rhythm. The cat's presence had somehow helped her find an anchor in the midst of her emotional tempest. Its own visible wounds and that worn pink collar told a story of loss transformed into strength, of hardship that hadn't diminished the capacity for compassion. As the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, Sarah felt something crystallize within her, a new kind of resolve that felt both gentle and unshakable. The cat's example had shown her that strength didn't have to mean being impervious to pain. It could mean remaining open to connection despite it. This small creature, bearing its own scars and stories, had somehow helped her find a way to carry her burden with grace. The park lamps created halos in the misty air, casting an ethereal quality over their shared moment of transformation. Sarah's phone buzzed again in her pocket, but this time she felt ready to answer it, to reconnect with the world beyond this bench. The cat's steady presence had helped her find something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not an escape from her pain, but a way to carry it with dignity. Sarah's thoughts turned to her mother again, but now they carried a different quality. Instead of being overwhelmed by the road ahead, she found herself focusing on the precious moments they could still share. The cat's demonstration of living fully in the present, despite past hardships, offered a powerful example of how to approach uncertain futures. Its worn collar reminded her that past joys didn't have to be diminished by present challenges. City sounds began to filter back into Sarah's awareness, but they no longer felt overwhelming. The cat's purring had created a kind of buffer zone, a space where pain could exist alongside hope. Looking down at her small companion, Sarah saw something she hadn't noticed before. A slight upturn at the corners of its mouth, almost like a smile. This detail, small but significant, seemed to confirm the intentionality of their encounter. Lightning flashed one final time, distant now, and Sarah caught a glimpse of their reflection in a nearby puddle, a woman and a cat, both rain-soaked but somehow dignified, sharing a moment of profound connection. The image struck her as powerful in its simplicity, two souls finding strength in each other's presence, despite the storm around them. The cat's scarred but noble bearing seemed to embody everything Sarah needed to learn about facing life's hardships. The transformation happening within Sarah felt almost tangible, like a physical weight being redistributed rather than removed. The cat's steady presence had shown her that it wasn't about finding a way to escape the pain, but about finding a way to carry it with grace. Its own visible injuries and that telling pink collar spoke to the possibility of moving forward while honoring what had been lost. A fresh breeze began to clear the rain-heavy air, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and new possibilities. Sarah felt something settle inside her, not a resolution to her situation, but a new way of approaching it. The cat's example had shown her that strength could be found in vulnerability, that comfort could be offered even from a place of hardship. Its choice to stay with her through the storm had demonstrated a truth about courage that she hadn't understood before. The park had taken on a different quality now, the rain-washed paths gleaming under the lamplight like new possibilities waiting to be explored. Sarah's grief hadn't disappeared, but it had somehow been transformed by this unexpected encounter. The cat's presence, its obvious history of both love and loss, had helped her find a way to hold both hope and pain in the same heart. The cat shifted slightly, adjusting its position but maintaining contact with Sarah's leg. Its fur was beginning to dry in patches, creating an almost mottled appearance that reminded Sarah of clouds breaking after a storm. This visual metaphor wasn't lost on her. Like the weather, like life itself, nothing remained in quite the same state forever. The cat's very existence proved that it was possible to weather life's storms and emerge with one's essential nature intact. As the last echoes of thunder faded into the distance, Sarah felt ready to take the next step, whatever it might be. The cat's example had shown her that moving forward didn't mean leaving everything behind. Like that old pink collar, some things could be carried as reminders of where you'd been, what you'd survived. Its scarred but unbroken spirit offered a blueprint for facing whatever lay ahead with dignity and grace. With a deep breath that felt like her first real breath in hours, Sarah finally reached for her phone. The cat watched intently as she dialed her sister's number, its steady presence giving her the strength she needed. Through the speaker came Amy's worried voice. "Sarah, where are you? We've been so worried." Sarah's response surprised even herself, coming out steady and clear. "I'm in the park and I'm not alone. I think I just met someone who's helping me see things differently." The cat's purring increased, as if in approval of Sarah's words, its body pressing more firmly against her leg. As Sarah began to explain to her sister about her unexpected companion, she found herself describing not just the physical presence of the cat, but the profound impact of their encounter. The words flowed naturally, carrying with them a new understanding of strength and resilience that she hadn't possessed just hours before. Her sister's initial confusion gave way to understanding as Sarah shared the story of this remarkable connection. "You won't believe this, Amy," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But this cat, it's wearing an old pink collar. It's been through so much, you can see it in its scars, but it still chose to sit with me in the rain. It's still capable of such gentleness." As she spoke, Sarah realized she was also describing her mother, a survivor who had never lost her capacity for kindness despite life's hardships. The parallel brought fresh tears to her eyes, but these were different from before. They carried hope rather than despair. The rain had almost stopped now, leaving behind a freshly washed world that seemed to sparkle under the park lights. Sarah found herself sharing with Amy her new resolution to face their mother's illness with the same quiet dignity she had witnessed in this remarkable cat. The cat, as if understanding its role in this transformation, maintained its steadfast presence, its golden eyes reflecting the newfound determination in Sarah's voice. Amy's response came thick with emotion. "Mom always said angels come in unexpected forms." As Sarah ended the call with a promise to head home soon, she noticed something extraordinary. The cat had begun to groom itself, meticulously cleaning its rain-soaked fur despite the public setting. This simple act of self-care, performed with such dignity despite its circumstances, struck Sarah as deeply meaningful. It demonstrated that taking care of oneself wasn't a luxury to be postponed until better times. It was an essential part of facing life's challenges. The next steps seemed to form naturally in Sarah's mind, each one feeling more possible than they had just hours ago. She would need to be strong for her mother, but not by denying her own feelings or needs. The cat had shown her that true strength could include vulnerability, that seeking and offering comfort weren't signs of weakness, but of profound courage. Its own visible wounds and that telling pink collar spoke to the possibility of carrying on with grace despite life's hardships. A small group of late-night joggers passed by, their footsteps splashing through puddles, and Sarah noticed how the cat maintained its composed demeanor despite their proximity. This too seemed like a lesson about maintaining one's essential nature regardless of external circumstances. The cat's ability to remain both alert and peaceful, cautious yet open to connection, offered a template for how to move forward through uncertain times. Sarah's thoughts turned to the immediate future, the hospital visits, the treatments, the difficult conversations ahead. But now, instead of feeling overwhelmed by these challenges, she found herself focusing on how to approach them with the same quiet dignity she had witnessed in her feline friend. The cat's example had shown her that it was possible to acknowledge life's hardships while still remaining open to moments of grace and connection. Reaching into her bag, Sarah pulled out a small packet of crackers, her untouched lunch from hours ago. As she opened it, the cat's ears perked up, though it maintained its dignified posture. Breaking off a small piece, Sarah offered it to her companion, watching as it accepted the morsel with surprising gentleness. This simple act of sharing felt symbolic somehow, a recognition that giving and receiving support were equally important parts of facing life's challenges. The night had grown cooler, but Sarah barely noticed the chill anymore. The wet clothes had become just another part of this transformative experience, like the cat's damp fur or the worn pink collar, physical reminders of what they had weathered together. The city sounds seemed different now, less threatening and more like a familiar backdrop to this moment of newfound strength. Even the distant sirens reminded her that life continued its course, carrying both challenges and unexpected moments of grace. Looking down at her companion, Sarah noticed how the cat had shifted its position to keep one eye on their surroundings while maintaining contact with her leg. This balance of vigilance and trust seemed to offer another lesson about moving forward, about remaining aware of life's challenges while still allowing space for connection and comfort. The cat's scarred but dignified presence embodied everything she hoped to bring to her mother's journey ahead. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Amy, "Coming to pick you up, stay where you are." Reading the message, Sarah felt a moment of concern about leaving her newfound friend, but the cat's steady gaze seemed to reassure her. Its presence had already given her what she needed most, not an escape from her situation, but a new way of facing it. The worn pink collar around its neck reminded her that some connections leave permanent marks on our hearts, even if they're brief. The park had taken on an almost magical quality in the aftermath of the storm, with water droplets catching the light like countless tiny stars. Sarah found herself committing every detail of this moment to memory. The weight of the cat against her leg, its gentle purring, the way its fur was beginning to fluff up as it dried. These simple observations grounded her in the present while giving her strength for the future, much like her mother had always taught her to find joy in life's small moments. Time seemed to move differently now as Sarah waited for her sister's arrival. Each minute felt full of meaning rather than heavy with dread. The cat remained by her side, its presence a living reminder of the lessons this evening had brought. About resilience, about connection, about finding strength in unexpected places. Its own journey from lost pet to street survivor to comfort giver spoke to the mysterious ways life could bring meaning from hardship. A car's headlights swept across the park entrance, and Sarah recognized her sister's vehicle pulling up to the curb. The moment of parting approached, but Sarah felt ready for it now. The cat's example had shown her that endings didn't have to diminish the significance of what had been shared. Its worn pink collar spoke to other partings, other transitions, yet here it was, still capable of offering profound connection when needed most. Amy's footsteps approached, accompanied by the soft splash of puddles, but Sarah kept her eyes on her small companion. The cat's presence had helped her find something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not an escape from her pain, but a way to carry it with dignity. Its scarred but unbroken spirit offered a template for facing whatever lay ahead, reminding her that strength could come in many forms. Through the gentle patter of leftover raindrops, Sarah heard her sister's sharp intake of breath as she approached and saw the scene before her. Sarah and the cat, still sharing their rain-washed bench, connected by something that defied easy explanation. The cat turned its golden eyes toward Amy briefly, before returning its steady gaze to Sarah, as if ensuring its final lesson had been received. In that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that this encounter would stay with her, supporting her through the challenging days ahead. As Amy reached the bench, the cat slowly rose to its feet, stretching with a grace that seemed to defy its harsh life circumstances. Its movement wasn't a departure, but a transition, much like the one Sarah herself was making. The worn pink collar caught the lamplight one final time, a reminder that love and loss, joy and pain, stray as Sarah and Amy drove home through the glistening streets of New York. The events in the park already felt like a dream, but the strength and clarity they had brought remained solid and real. The small grey cat with its worn pink collar had disappeared into the night, but its impact continued to ripple through Sarah's heart and mind. Sometimes, she realized, the most profound changes come not from grand gestures or dramatic events, but from quiet moments of connection with unlikely angels. The next morning, as Sarah walked into her mother's hospital room, something was noticeably different. Her mother, always perceptive, noticed it immediately. A new kind of peace in her daughter's eyes, a gentle strength that hadn't been there before. When Sarah shared the story of her encounter in the park, her mother's eyes filled with tears of understanding. "You see?" she whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand. "Sometimes the biggest miracles come in the smallest packages." That chance encounter in Central Park became a touchstone for both Sarah and her mother during the challenging months that followed. On difficult days, when treatments seemed overwhelming or hope felt distant, Sarah would remember the cat's quiet dignity, its ability to offer comfort despite its own hardships. Memory became a source of strength, a reminder that grace could be found even in life's storms. Her mother too drew inspiration from the story, often saying that she wanted to face her challenges with the same quiet courage as that remarkable cat. The impact of that rainy evening continued to expand in unexpected ways. Sarah found herself sharing the story with her students, teaching them about resilience and kindness through the example of the grey cat with the pink collar. The children were captivated by the tale, and soon their classroom developed a special appreciation for the stray cats that lived near their school. Small acts of kindness began to multiply, inspired by one cat's decision to offer comfort to a stranger in distress. Sarah never saw the cat again in person, though she often looked for it during her walks through the park, but in a way its physical presence wasn't necessary anymore. The lessons it had taught her had become a permanent part of her heart. Like its worn pink collar, a reminder of both loss and love, the memory of their encounter served as a testament to life's capacity for unexpected grace. The cat's example had shown her that true strength often comes disguised in vulnerability, and that comfort can flow from the most unlikely sources. Amy noticed the lasting change in her sister as well. The woman who had once been overwhelmed by their mother's diagnosis had found a way to balance hope and reality, strength and tenderness. When people asked how Sarah managed to maintain her spirit through such difficult times, she would smile and tell them about a rainy evening in Central Park, when a small grey cat had taught her everything she needed to know about courage and connection. Months passed, and while their mother's journey had its ups and downs, the family faced it together with a newfound resilience. Sarah often thought about how a single act of kindness from a creature that had every reason to be distrustful of the world had created such lasting ripples of hope and healing. The cat's example reminded her daily that every moment of connection, no matter how brief, had the potential to transform lives. The story spread beyond their immediate circle, touching others who were facing their own storms. Sarah's students wrote stories about the cat, creating illustrations that captured its dignified bearing and gentle spirit. These stories found their way to other classrooms, other families, carrying with them the message that strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful angels appear on four paws. As the seasons changed and life continued its unpredictable course, the lessons of that rainy evening remained constant in Sarah's heart. She had learned that true courage isn't about being unafraid or unaffected by life's challenges. It's about remaining open to connection, to hope, to the possibility of finding light, even in the darkest moments. The cat, with its scars and its worn pink collar, had shown her that every soul has the capacity to both give and receive healing. The final lesson of their encounter, Sarah realized, wasn't just about finding strength in difficult times. It was about recognizing that we are never truly alone in our struggles. Just as that small cat had chosen to share her burden on a rainy evening in Central Park, there are always sources of comfort and connection available to us if we remain open to receiving them. Sometimes they come in unexpected forms, but their impact can change our lives forever. Couth and vulnerability could all exist together in one heart. The cat's final purr seemed to carry a message. Everything that was needed for the journey ahead was already present within. Sarah stood slowly, her body stiff from sitting so long in the rain, but her spirit lighter than it had been in days. The cat took a few steps back, maintaining eye contact as if ensuring its work was complete. In its dignified bearing and gentle presence, Sarah saw a reflection of how she hoped to face the challenges ahead. With grace, with courage, and with an open heart. This unexpected encounter had shown her that sometimes the most profound strength comes not from avoiding life's storms, but from learning to dance in the rain. Amy wrapped a warm arm around her sister's shoulders, and together they watched as the cat began to move away, its steps sure and purposeful, despite its old injury. Its departure didn't feel like an ending, but a continuation of its own journey and of the lessons it had shared. Sarah knew that whatever lay ahead, she would carry this moment with her, the memory of a small grey cat with a pink collar who had shown her how to find strength in vulnerability and hope in the midst of storms.